Welcome back to the channel. We're going to talk about one of the craziest stories I've heard of as far as the special operations community is concerned, because they're always doing some secret squirrel stuff, but this time the Israeli Defense Force was doing the secret squirrel stuff. On September 8th of 2024, 120 Israeli commandos conducted a raid and destroyed an underground Iran-backed missile manufacturing facility in Syria that was intended to provide the Iranian-backed Hezbollah group with missiles that they could launch into Israel.
On September 9th, soldiers of the Shaldag unit landed inside Syria in a special operation deep within enemy territory. Under heavy fire and in cooperation with the IAF and the Israeli Navy, this operation was carried out following years of intelligence. The mission: dismantling a Syrian-owned, Iranian-funded underground missile production site and destroying critical infrastructure in the development and production of strategic weaponry and precise munitions. Additional weapons and intelligence were also found and were transferred for further review. After completing the mission, our soldiers destroyed the compound and returned home safely. Our soldiers will operate wherever necessary to keep Israelis safe.
The operation was called Operation Many Ways, and it was conducted on a facility that was codenamed Deep Layer. Now, the facility was allegedly located near the Masyaf area in western Syria, close to the Mediterranean Sea, which was considered a region that was a military stronghold for the Syrian air defenses for the Assad regime. And the Assad regime had pretty close ties with Iran, as they were allowing a bunch of Iranian weapons and affiliated people into their country to do whatever they wanted, pretty much up until the toppling of the Assad regime. Now, on the 2nd of January, the Israeli Defense Force released video footage of this raid taking place, as well as declassified details of the operation. Now, Israel's been watching this facility since 2017, so about 7 years, 8 years. According to the Israeli Air Force, Iran's construction of the Deep Layer facility began in late 2017 following an earlier airstrike on an above-ground rocket engine manufacturing site at the Scientific Studies and Research Center in Jamraya, southern Syria. This attack led Iran to shift its operations underground, aiming to safeguard its missile production capabilities from future airstrikes. By 2021, the underground facility, buried 70 to 130 meters into a mountain, had become operational with missile production capabilities almost at full scale. The facility was horseshoe-shaped and featured 3 primary entrances, one for raw materials, another for completed missiles, and a third for logistics and office access. There are 16 production rooms that lined the facility, including mixers for rocket fuel, missile body construction areas, and paint rooms. The Israeli Defense Force estimated that the facility's annual output could have ranged between 100 and 300 missiles per year, capable of reaching targets up to 300 kilometers away, meaning that they could strike anywhere in Israel with these missiles. Now, the facility was located about 200 kilometers north of the Israeli border and 45 kilometers from Syria's western coastline near Masyaf, which was close to the Mediterranean Sea. The deep layer facility was offering Iran the ability to circumvent Israeli airstrikes on overland weapon convoys to Hezbollah because it was buried so deep underground. Now, like I said, the Israeli Defense Force had been monitoring and gathering intelligence on this facility since 2017, and they had been formulating some plans over the past few years about it, but they realized that time was of the essence in regards to this facility because they were getting ready to start manufacturing hundreds of missiles per year, and they wanted to make sure that they prevented those missiles from getting into the hands of the Iranian-backed Hezbollah group. Now, the unit's referred to as the Elite Shaldag Unit, which they're known for long-range penetration operations, and then also Unit 669, which is specialized in combat search and rescue, and those were the guys that were selected for the mission. Over 2 months, they trained for this, including simulations, backup scenarios, and other sorts of preparations in order to mitigate as many of the risks that they could face through this high-stakes mission. They ended up picking the specific date in September for it because the weather was favorable, and they wanted to make sure that they were able to land safely. The operation started off with 100 Shaldag commandos and 20 Unit 669 medics boarding 4 CH-53 heavy transport helicopters. They were escorted by AH-64 attack helicopters, 21 fighter jets, 5 drones, and 14 reconnaissance planes. The convoy departed from Israel, and they flew over the Mediterranean in order to avoid detection from Syrian radar systems. Once they got into Syrian airspace, the helicopters flew extremely low to evade one of the country's densest air defense zones, second only to Damascus. While they were in the process of conducting this raid, the Israeli Air Force aircraft launched diversionary strikes on other Syrian targets to draw attention away from the Masyaf region while they were doing the raid. The helicopters ended up landing near the facility's entrances, and they deployed all their troops while they maintained a security perimeter, and then Unit 669 personnel remained on standby on the aircraft in order to be prepared to evacuate casualties if casualties were taken. In the meantime, they conducted surveillance with ISR drones that were launched by Commandos to monitor the area around the facility. Now, the Israeli Commandos ended up securing the perimeter and breached the facility's heavily fortified entrances using equipment that happened to be on site, including forklifts. Some of the soldiers had undergone forklift training in preparation for that specific task. Once they were inside, the team planted approximately 660 pounds of explosives along the production line, targeting critical machinery such as planetary mixers. After all the charges were in place, the team exited the facility and they remotely detonated all of the explosives to take out all of this missile production equipment. Apparently, according to some of the soldiers, they said that the explosives caused a mini earthquake, saying that the ground was trembling after the detonations occurred. In total, the mission took about a little bit less than 3 hours, and after they completed their mission, the Commandos boarded the same helicopters that had delivered them, and they extracted and left Syria to go back to it. The Commandos completed their mission in a little bit less than 3 hours, and then they boarded the helicopters that actually infiltrated with, and then they departed to return to Israel. Throughout the course of this operation, the Israeli Defense Force Commandos reported neutralizing approximately 30 Syrian guards and soldiers during the operation, while Syrian media claimed that there was 14 fatalities and 43 injuries. Now, Lieutenant Colonel Nadav Shoshani briefed reporters that this facility was the flagship of Iranian manufacturing efforts in the region, and they believed that the facility was designed to manufacture hundreds of strategic missiles per year from start to finish so that Hezbollah could continue their attacks on Israel. When they conducted the raid, finally, they believed that it was an immediate threat and it needed to be taken care of immediately. Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu said that this was one of the most important preventative operations that we have taken against the efforts of the Iranian axis to arm itself in order to attack us. Now, throughout the past 8, 9, 10 years, the Israeli officials accused the former Syrian government of Bashar al-Assad of helping and assisting Iranian-backed Hezbollah numerous times to receive arms from Iran because they allowed them to kind of traverse their terrain through Syria uninhibited, essentially, which was why once the Assad regime was toppled, you saw a lot of the Iranian-backed militia groups exiting the country because they no longer had the support of the government there. Now, Lieutenant Colonel Nadav Shoshani said that this was one of the most, or he said stated that this was one of the most complex operations that the Israeli Defense Force has done in recent years. Now, apparently the Shaldag forces, the Israeli commandos, were dropped off around 700 meters from the facility entrance, so they had a decent amount of ground to cover before they got there. But they were also supported by Israeli Air Force, which initial Israeli Defense Force estimates said that they took out around 26 of the 30 Syrians that were guarding this facility, allegedly. At least 2 of those that were taken out were guarding the entrance to the base, and some Syrians were in jeeps or on motorcycles who tried to approach and assist. Now, this whole operation could have gone extremely bad because within the first 2.5 hours, there were dozens of additional Syrian forces that came to try to take out the Israeli Defense Force folks from the site. However, it took them a bit of time to arrive, and there was a mixture of their defensive perimeter they had established and also Israeli Air Force power that was able to successfully prevent them from inhibiting their operation. However, had it gone on longer, it could have been bad because it could have ended up resulting in hundreds of Syrian forces, including a lot of heavy mechanized units, getting to there to reinforce the Syrian forces on the ground of the facility. So it's good that it only took as long as it did and that they were able to execute in a relatively short amount of time, all things considered. Now, throughout the course of the war that's been going on between, Gaza and not Gaza, but the, Hamas and Hezbollah and Israel has resulted in about 13 of the Shaldag commandos losing their lives. And about 50% of the Shaldag commandos are reservists, interestingly enough. But the Special Forces unit has grown significantly throughout the course of the entirety of this conflict that's been going on. Now, obviously, having destroyed this facility, it's going to prevent the Israeli or the Iranian-backed Hezbollah forces from receiving these types of armaments. And not to mention the fact that since the Assad regime has been toppled, and it seems, at least for now, that the Hayat Tahrir al-Sham group that has taken over as the temporary government, they don't seem to be as friendly with Iran, so that's a good thing, but only time will tell whether or not that remains the same as we go forward. So either way, I thought this was a crazy story, and it's cool seeing video of it because it's not very often that you get to see an actual live raid conducted by Special Forces, and I figured you all would enjoy this. So anyway, thanks so much for watching, and we'll see you in the next video.